Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a check of the top headlines this hour. Authorities are still searching for the gunman who killed 2 students at Brown University, with the manhunt stretching beyond 72 hours as police again appeal to the public for help. Local officials said video footage shows a possible suspect wearing dark clothes and a face mask near the scene as residents remain on edge. Australian police have charged a man with 59 offences, including a terrorism charge over the shooting at Bondi Beach that killed many, as funerals were held in Sydney, while police has confirmed an injured officer lost an eye while acting with courage during the shootings. Australian State Parliament to be recalled to pass stricter gun laws. This comes as the local premier said the Australian State Parliament of New South Wales will reconvene next week to discuss urgent legislation on gun control in the wake of the deadly Bondi shootings and consider protest reforms. Thailand's Pheu Thai party has named Yochanan Wongsavat as its main prime ministerial candidate for the February election, as it seeks a comeback after its patriarch Thaksin Shinawatra has been jailed, while a Pheu Thai support has declined, with Yochanan, a Shinawatra nephew with a limited political experience, could be a breeze of fresh air to regain support. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Addis Ababa, where he was received as Ethiopia's highest honor, as he starts his 2-day visit today, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali have agreed to elevate India-Ethiopia relations to a strategic partnership. US President Donald Trump has expanded a list of countries subject to full travel ban, prohibiting citizens from an additional 7 countries. The expanded ban goes into effect January 1 of next year, while he has also added partial restrictions and entry limitations on additional 15 countries. According to Pentagon statements, senior US and Chinese defense officials met in Washington from December 15 to 16. The talks brought together US Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary Alvaro Smith and Chinese Major General Ye Jiang for the 19th annual US-China Defense Policy Coordination Talks. Beijing's ambassador to Moscow, Zhang Hanhui, said construction is advancing on a new Far Eastern gas route from Russia's Pacific coast to China, with exports due to begin in 2027. The project will link to Russia's Sakhalin-Khabarovsk-Vladivostok pipeline system as Moscow deepens energy ties with Beijing. And let's start with the top focus here. As a European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen says Europe must take full responsibility for its own security, calling it no longer a choice but necessity. Speaking to the European Parliament in Strasbourg, she said the continent cannot afford to rely on others to define its place in the world. Von der Leyen stressed that Europe must shape its own strategic outlook, warning against dependence on external powers. She acknowledged that the US national security strategy is correct in noting Europe's declining share of global GDP, but added that the United States itself is on a similar trajectory. Her remarks come amid growing debate over Europe's defense capabilities, military spending, and long-term strategic autonomy as geopolitical pressure increases and transatlantic relations continue to evolve.
Europe's era of independence must be unstoppable. And we have more work to do. We have to go further. We must move swiftly. And that is particularly important when it comes to security and defense. The bottom line is simple. Europe must be responsible for its own security, This is not longer an option, this is a must. I proposed two different options for this upcoming European Council, one based on assets and one based on EU borrowing, and we will have to decide which way we want to take, which route we want to take. But one thing is very, very clear. We have to take the decision to fund Ukraine for the next 2 years in this European Council.
And now joining me in this discussion is Alison Mutler, former AP Bureau Chief in Romania, joins us live from Bucharest. Thank you, Alison, for joining us once again here at NewsX World. Alison, is this a message just to the European Union or to the West as well, particularly the US?
It's a very clear message. You heard how slowly and deliberately Ursula von der Leyen spoke. It is a message both to EU members and Europe at large, but also to the US. She is saying that it's clear that things are changing. She doesn't say it, she's not really mentioning the US except by saying their GDP is declining, but it's clear their paths of the US and Europe are slightly diverging over Ukraine. And Ursula von der Leyen is telling EU members they have to step up and they have to ensure Ukraine's security in their next 2-year budget. And the reason for this, she doesn't say it, but it's because Europe's security depends on this. And the underlying or the unsaid message is we can't rely on the US like we used to. It's not, the US hasn't left NATO or anything like that, but the messaging coming from Washington, from Donald Trump, is that Europe is going to be more or less left on its own. The US will participate, but not in the way it had before, like a sort of big brother making sure everything was all right. Things are changing, and Ursula von der Leyen is laying that out very clearly for EU members and also for the US. This is a global message.
Do you think this is going to really help in bringing together European Union countries which are clearly seeing a division over several policies, including migration, over the question of Ukraine? How impactful is this message of Ursula von der Leyen going to be?
Well, it's very clear. Possibly governments like in Hungary, Orban and Fico in Slovakia won't be so keen on it. But Hungary has elections next year in April, and Orban at this moment looks poised to lose them. There is a new contender, very strong contender, Peter Magyar. So Orban won't be in power forever. I don't know what Hungary will choose next, but it certainly won't be somebody who's a blueprint of Orban. Slovakia has a loud voice, but it's not a big player in the European Union. So obviously Europe is united through diversity, and there'll be diverse range of opinions, but the main countries are Germany, France, Italy. The UK is not in the EU, but it's an important member of Ukraine's defence because it's in NATO.
Right.
So these are the big players, and Poland too. That, as you saw, they were at the Berlin the Council earlier this week. Poland is also the biggest player in Eastern Europe. It's very important for NATO and the EU.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Alison, for your comments there. Do stay on, though. I'd like your opinion moving forward as well. Viewers, the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has called for a swift action on a peace plan to end the war in Ukraine, saying progress must be made while the United States remains actively engaged. In an interview, Lukashenko said much now depends on US President Donald Trump and urged him not to step away from diplomatic efforts. Lukashenko said the conflict should be frozen to stop further bloodshed, warning that failure to act could have serious consequences for Europe and the wider world. He argued that once fighting ends, negotiations can begin in earnest. The comments came as US, Ukrainian and European officials continue consultations on a revised peace proposal amid ongoing fighting and territorial control by Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. Let's listen in.
Теперь очень многое зависит от позиции Трампа и Соединенных Штатов Америки. Очень многое. Главное, чтобы Трамп от этой позиции не отступил. Он человек с характером, порой импульсивный, чтобы он не плюнул на это все рукой, не махнул и не ушел в сторону. Если он будет настойчиво двигаться в этом плане, значит, результат будет.
Moving on, viewers, let's cover some news from Africa. At least 104 civilians have been killed in drone attacks across Sudan's Kordofan region as violence between Sudan's rival military factions escalates. The attacks, which have been ongoing since early December, follow the capture of a key army base by the paramilitary rapid support forces in Bamnusha. The deadliest attack occurred in South Kordofan, where 89 people, including 43 children, were killed in a strike on a kindergarten and hospital. UN officials have condemned the targeting of medical facilities as a violation of international law. The ongoing fighting has displaced tens of thousands of people and overwhelmed already fragile health facilities, which are battling cholera and dengue outbreaks. The RSF's capture of strategic locations in Kordofan marks a dangerous new phase in Sudan's brutal civil war, now in its third year. International efforts to broker peace continue, but the situation remains dire. Let's now welcome Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, who is former Indian diplomat to Nigeria, joins us live from New Delhi. All right, before we are joined in by our guest viewers, let's tell you some crucial details in connection to the civil war in Sudan. Fighting has been intensifying as a humanitarian crisis deepens with outbreaks of cholera and other diseases, and also due to mass displacement. All right, Ambassador Sachdev is now live with us. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us here at NewsX World. Now, Sudan has been seeing a civil war for years now, and the latest strikes are particularly concerning, given that the country is also seeing the outbreak of cholera and there's a looming question of mass displacements. How do you see the situation in Sudan?
I think the situation in Sudan is quite precarious. It's been a civil war raging without any compunctions for nearly 2 years, and while nobody has put a solid figure at the casualties, nearly 100,000 people are supposed to have died, according to estimates. It's a very dire humanitarian situation, as you have indicated, and the trouble is that the fighting is nowhere nearing any ceasefire. While RSF has publicly declared that they would observe 3 months of ceasefire last week, but the situation on ground continues to be violent, and new areas of conflict are being reported all the time.
Ambassador, do also share light on the RSF capture of the Higlig oil field. What does that really mean for the Sudan war?
Well, the Higlig oil field is the only oil field in Sudan worth naming. Majority of that area's oil fields had been transferred to South Sudan, and this Higlig was the only major oil field in Sudan itself. And it was in the hands of the government forces, the SAF, and nearly 2 weeks ago, Higlig was reportedly taken over by RSF forces. And latest reports also indicate that South Sudan's army was approaching this oil field, so as to ensure that it stays in their hands, and the continuity of the pipeline to Port Sudan from South Sudan continues in their hands. And the oil exports, which is the only major resource for South Sudan, continues uninterrupted. But the reports are sketchy, and if these reports are correct, then Heglig oil production facility, due to political risk, could come unstuck, and that would be net loss of revenue to Sudan as a country.
Ambassador, there are also some reports that the RSF is trying to hide the atrocities, the reports of burning bodies and mass graves. Would you have some additional information on that context as well?
Was in October by RSF, and this capture Al Fasher, which was the capital of North Darfur, and was in RSF, was under siege by RSF while it was with the SAF forces, ended in its surrender towards the end of October to RSF, and that after nearly an year of siege was followed by reported huge number of massacres by RSF forces inside the city, and Yale and other observers through satellite imagery have now concluded that at least 10,000 people were buried in mass graves, visible through satellite imagery. RSF has denied these allegations, but there seem to be some circumstantial evidence in terms of huge number of refugees having crossed from North Darfur, of which Al Fasher was the capital, to Chad and South Libya. So those people seem to have also corroborated what satellite imagery has shown, that large number of residents of Al Fasher were murdered by victorious RSF forces. One should tell you that RSF was formerly called Janjaweed militia of Arab soldiers, and Darfur region has been the area that this Janjaweed militia has operated for nearly 2 decades, and they are known to be racially inclined, with the majority of Darfur citizenry being black Africans. These largely Arab Janjaweed militia were known to have been atrocious towards the original citizens of Darfur. Relevant to note that only last week, one of the militia leaders was sentenced by the International Criminal Court for his involvement in genocide in that area. RSF was a consolidation of Janjaweed militia into a regular paramilitary force by Sudan's last president, al-Bashir, and he wanted it to act as a counterpoise to regular Sudan armed forces, and that rivalry between SAF and RSF has actually followed after al-Bashir's ouster, and RSF and SAF have been heading the two belligerents groups involved in the civil war in Sudan in last 2.25 years.
Okay. All right. And for now, thank you very much, Ambassador Sachdev, for sharing your valuable insights with us here at NewsX World. And with that, let's shift to news coming in from Korea. North Korea has marked the 14th anniversary of the death of its late leader Kim Jong-il today on December 17. Now, according to the state media, citizens, soldiers and officials gathered at key locations to honor Kim's memory. In Pyongyang, crowds were seen laying flowers at the Manso Hill Grand Monument, which features statues of Kim Jong-il and his father Kim Il-sung. The national observance included flower offerings at monuments across the country. Kim Jong-il, who led North Korea from 1994 until his death, is believed to have passed away on December 17 in 2011 due to complications from a heart attack. Now, moving on to some news from the United States, it is preparing a further round of sanctions on Russia's energy sector to increase the pressure on Moscow should President Vladimir Putin reject a peace deal with Ukraine. This is only as per reports. The US is considering options such as targeting vessels in Russia's so-called shadow of fleet tankers used to transport Moscow's oil and traders who facilitate the transactions. Meanwhile, Kremlin spokesperson Peskov claimed that he had not seen the specific report, and he reiterated that Russia's position on key peace deal elements such as the deployment of European troops in Ukraine remains clear and consistent. He also dismissed the effectiveness of Western sanctions generally, stating they have proven absolutely useless in forcing Russia to change its course. And let's welcome back Alison to join us in this discussion. Alison is the former AP Bureau Chief in Romania and joins us live from Bucharest. Thank you, Alison, for continuing to stay with us and to join us in this discussion. Alison, firstly, how reliable, in your opinion, are these reports? Is it possible that Trump could take such a drastic measure after so many rounds of negotiations and claiming time and again that Putin and his demands seem to be fair and it's Zelensky with whom his patience is running out?
Well, one thing we've learned about Donald Trump, particularly in the Russia-Ukraine hostilities, the war, is that Donald Trump is quite prone to changing his mind, going backwards, blowing hot and blowing cold.
Sure.
When he speaks to the Russians, he's very pro-Russian. And then he has a breathing space and he speaks to the Ukrainians and he changes his tune a bit. Now, at heart, I think he would like to agree to Vladimir Putin's demands very simply and just push through a peace deal. But this is not possible because we have Ukraine, because we have Europe, and because still the US is a major world player and wants to be seen to be brokering this peace deal. So what he would ideally like, I think he realizes is not possible. This idea of targeting the shadow fleet, the European Union has already done this, and the idea is, this was leaked, I think it was Bloomberg, so that's a US news agency, reported this, so I would trust it to be true, and I think it's probably leaked by the administration as a way to put pressure on Kremlin that they too are going to have to make some compromises, which Russia has not been seen to want so far. They are pushing for their maximalist demands, everything they want in Ukraine, that's how they want the deal to be. But the US message here is, if you don't agree to a watered down agreement of what you actually, your desired outcome, then we will punish you economically. Peskov, his spokesman, the Kremlin spokesman, says this doesn't hurt us at all. Of course it hurts them, but Russia is not going to admit that. They can continue to wage their war with or without sanctions, but their economy is suffering under the war, which is now almost 4 years old. So they don't need any more sanctions. So this is a way of applying extra pressure to Russia to try and get them to bend a little bit and make a few compromises, which at the moment, I don't see Kremlin making any compromises, because that's how Vladimir Putin stays in power, is by pushing for these maximalist demands. And if he does seem to blink, to concede, then he could be out of power. So we're still in a very tricky situation.
All right, we'll watch out for that. But thank you, Alison, for sharing your opinion here. And moving on now, viewers. OpenAI, Google and Perplexity have begun an unprecedented fight for artificial intelligence. Users in India rolling out freebies in a strategy that has been seen as a way to harvest troves of multilingual training data in the world's most populous nation. India is the second largest smartphone market with 730 million devices. On an average, Indians consume 21 gigabytes of data per month, paying 9.2% per gigabytes, one of the world's lowest mobile data rates. Meanwhile, to lure price-conscious users, Google in November has started giving its $400 Gemini AI Pro subscription for free for 18 months to 500 million customers of Reliance Jio, India's biggest telecom player. Last week, it has added India to dozens of countries where it is offering its heavily discounted AI Plus package. However, OpenAI has also made its ChatGPT Go plan, which offers extended but not unlimited usage as compared with existing plans, free for a year. The plan incurs charges in more than 100 countries and was $54 in India before being made free to everyone in the country in November. That's all we have time for. Do keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.